Hello, everyone. How the hell are you? Uh, Welcome to Saturday Night Live and Rambling, featuring obviously the lovely Miss E Train. Glad to
Thank
have you
you.
tonight. Appreciate you
Well,
being with us
am I ever not here? Or are you not talking to me? You're talking to them.
mentally, physically, spiritually. Sometimes the
Gotcha.
ADD kicks in a little bit.
Who, me? No, not
So, and,
possible.
and for those tuning in, obviously, we're glad to have you as well. Interesting night tonight. We've been just diluted with tons of news and events this past week, and most of them aren't that good. Most of them are what I would constitute a fail. Anytime you have a war starting up, that's a major fail.
It's been a
The-
it's been a very rough week for
yes.
many people, and our condolences if you have anyone in Israel, hey KP, or in Gaza. The images have been awful. Um, I it's just a lot.
Yeah, it is. And it's going to get worse.
Yep.
There are a lot of issues to cover. And so we look forward to covering them with you, engaging with you in them. Uh, Hopefully, have a little fun, even though they're relatively serious topics. And hopefully, advance knowledge and fellowship at the same time. So, we'll kind of begin with a continuation of Tuesday. I don't know if you were able to watch Tuesday or, um, but during it, I went on apparently a little rant, as some have described it, about the failure
Apparently.
of, okay, the failure
Okay.
of the educational system with regards to math. And also mentioned that the English grammar writing skills were severely delinquent. And it's weird, it's unusual in that I'm a finance professor, but I have a course, an investments course that's designated a writing intensive course. Now, I don't know who the brainiacs were that decided that I ought to do the job of the English department in teaching the kids grammar, writing, organization, flow, whatever. But it's powers greater than me. And every department has to have a writing intensive course. And I think the chair at the time thought it would just be funny if I was that writing instructor. So,
Unfortunately,
I,
many English professors have gotten cursed out by Clay in the meantime, since that has started, and they don't like him very much in the English department.
yeah, I wouldn't say many have. I have had a conversation, let's say, with a former chair of the department. But
Only if you're subscribed, Carson. So don't hit it if you're already subscribed.
thank you,
Do we
Carson.
need do we need to do an educational video on this? I'm kidding, Carson.
So I was kind of asked to review, I guess, how I review writing assignments with the students. Now I have them, the process is really simple. I have them turn in a rough draft at midterm so that on the fall break, which I'm on now, I can spend it grading papers, which is a genuine and true love of mine, which is why I went into English in the first place. But nonetheless, I have to do it. So I kind of make their rough drafts bleed a little bit. I pick a different topic every time because some of the students would use a paper from their freshman year. And I thought, well, that's not really kosher. So let me come up with a contemporaneous topic. And so this time the topic was resolved. Biden is the worst president in history, which I think is kind of funny. I don't really care the position they take. I want them to either justify the yay or the nay in a rational, cogent, thoughtful manner. And like I say, I try to pick something that's halfway interested and that they'll get a little bit involved in, because I'm tired. I got tired of reading boring papers on, the sun rising. And so I like ones with a little controversy. So I usually pick somewhat of a controversial topic for them to write on. It's a writing assignment. All I do is, and I tell them, turn in the rough draft, make the corrections, and you'll get full credit. Do what I tell you to do, you'll get full credit. So the content of it, the idea, whatever, really doesn't matter.
It's funny though, because you literally write out exactly what they have to do to correct it, like literally. And
Yeah.
yet very few of them actually do it. Sky Ricky, funny topic. Yeah. Carson. Sorry, I was just reading above. Clay likes a little bit of controversy. I'm sure you hadn't noticed.
I'm not averse to it, but I
Mm.
think that's in some ways how people learn, by listening to contrary thought, opinions, ideas, and it's better than reading about the damn weather.
It is
So
in your rule number 1, which your students should have learned by now.
is do what I say
Do as I say, when I say, and how I say,
exactly
and
as
you'll
I
be
say.
okay. And
Yes,
you'll be okay.
you're close.
I added a few more who's, how's, when, where's, what's, whatever.
No, you dropped one.
Which one did
Do as I
you didn't let
say,
me finish.
exactly as I say,
Isn't that
when
the
I
same
say,
thing?
how I say, and you will be okay. So the writing assignment, how do I once I get them graded, make them bleed, we have a take a day and review English writing. Here's the review that I use. Writing assignment review, or how the hell did you pass freshman English?
Fair enough.
First thing is I talk about is, does it matter? Their name is on it. If they can't take pride in something they put their name on, that speaks more to their character and their future prospects than probably anything.
And how the hell would you know who it was from if they didn't put their name on it? Just saying.
Well, it's not do they put their name on it, it's that because their name is on it, they need to
Oh,
take
it
pride
should
in it.
matter. Got it. Okay.
Yes. And they're asked, did you try or did you just half-ass it? Discipline is hard. And I've got materials on, posted of how to write a good research paper and how to write good, which lists a lot of common errors. I've also given some verbal instructions in class, discussed the subject in email. And then there are common errors. Been doing this for 10 years. There are common errors that I continually see. And one thing I recommend, and I'm not going to go over all of this, but one thing I recommend is that in writing, that they put 2 spaces after a period. And for those of you that took typing in high school, that's how we learned. And now today, the convention in modern editorial and print work is 1 space because it saves paper.
Real quick. Hey, Catherine. I don't know who Chad is, but we love
I'm not
you.
going to say,
And
hey,
you can
she
catch
called me
up.
Chad.
You can catch up on the rewatch crew. We love you. Don't worry. You can call Clay whatever you want. Some people call him asshole or jackass.
I've been called worse.
And hang on. Wait. Not that one. This one.
Or I could write like this and
Really have fun with Clay.
fun with it. Yeah. Now, the the two spaces to me, as you're reading through, even if it's typed work, which all of this is, it helps your mind, particularly if you're reading fast, and I tend to read fast, particularly if you're reading fast, it helps your mind separate the thoughts a little easier. It's kind of a subconscious thing. But if you read a paragraph with two spaces after each period, and then another paragraph with only one space after each period, I think you'll find the comprehension on the two spaces is probably a little better. So that's the only reason I recommend. I don't require two spaces. This is a business professional paper. No first person, depersonalize it. Nobody cares about your thought or opinion. You've not earned the right to have an opinion that matters. And so
Okay,
nobody wants to hear it. They only want to hear the facts.
Clay, two things. Can you blow that up a little bit?
No, that's about as big as they can get.
Oh, because you're on. Okay.
I'll do a
Oh, see,
little
look,
bit.
there you go. Okay, then we have Catherine has a question because I know she's not going to be here.
We use the two standard MPS and a what's the alphabet of the other one? I can't think of the other one. Style manuals as far as acceptable writing, but they don't make up for years of ineptitude with grammar, mechanics, and overall writing development, which most of these kids, particularly those from American educational system, don't have not had. So, and that's a common complaint I hear from potential employers is that kids are woefully weak in communication skills, both written and oral.
Or in
So,
just manners. There was that girl you were telling me about.
well, it's just common sense. This
I mean, the
I
job
had an
interview.
employer tell me about one girl that was in an interview with him, and her phone rang, and she said, "Excuse me a minute, it's her boyfriend." And so she stopped the interview to talk to her boyfriend. And as soon as she hung up, the guy said, "We're done." Just absolutely no real idea of the way the world works. It's only their immediacy that matters. So back to the writing
Sorry.
style. Also, talk about vagueness in wording. Sometimes they will just have a rambling collection of thought. They'll choose wrong words. And I use, for example, there, and there. They are their property over there. So they rely on spell checks so much, they don't proof their work well, that they have a lot of spelling errors or word choice errors due to trusting spell check. Also, most of them write with such a passive tone. A lot of, to be, a lot of maybes, could, whatever. It's just boring writing. Passive is boring. Most of the best writers will have more action. They'll make the subject do action. For example, I use the example of Marvin Gaye's "I Heard It Through the Grapevine." That's an active statement. It's also a damn great song. But if he wrote it in the passive voice, it would be, "It was heard by me through the grapevine," which just doesn't have the same mental effect. And then developing, logical sequences in your writing, one paragraph flowing to another, taking a paragraph and, having the ending flow into the beginning of the next paragraph. First paragraph should set an overall tone for the paper. First paragraph should be written in such a way that it makes people want to read the rest of the paper. And then obviously capitalizing proper nouns and titles. And yes, I oftentimes have to explain what a proper noun is.
Can I okay, go
Well,
ahead.
you
Never
already
mind.
have. What?
I think everybody knows like this they know kind of like what the proper way to write anything is.
Yeah, I was just reviewing what I do. I can go a little faster.
Okay.
One thing that I am not a fan of is if you're addressing a paper to somebody and you can't get their name correct. I remember when I was on a hiring committee for a finance professor position, we'd receive hundreds of applications. And in the ad, it says, please contact this guy who was the chair of the department at the time, gave his name. But a lot of the letters were addressed to whom it may concern, or dear sir, or madam, or whatever. And I'm like, if you can't even follow the simple instructions in the help wanted ad, you don't possess the necessary or requisite gear to serve in my beloved department. So I wouldn't even read any further. I'd go ahead and throw them in the ash can. Talk about actually having to do some background research on the topic. Many of them will, like I say, just throw together a string of collective random thoughts, mention the topic every once in a while and think that's a paper. Also, I want them to focus, importantly, I want them to focus on consequences, not platitudes or innuendo. I want them to detail actual factual context and arguments in the paper. I want them to point out or deconstruct, fallacious reasoning, no appeals to authority or ad hominem. So we'll review those kind of things. I also want them to have at least one proper footnote. So we talk about how to actually cite articles in academic work and use a proper footnote and proper reference or cite. Now, I think
So Carson says it is familiar. Sheesh, Clay. And Brentwood, hey, I'm glad you're here for just a moment. I know you have company, but we appreciate you just showing up for a moment.
A couple other things, obviously, that, one thing is common is that I'll have students use different fonts in the paper. And so kind of point out that, no, you just use one font. And this, I think, is what Ellen was most interested in and wanted me to get to. She loves this part. This is
hilarious.
An actual paper that I received, rough draft that I received from a student. I quit reviewing it after the second paragraph. I just couldn't take any more. And I don't know, you probably can't see it. You probably have to blow up your screen.
Let's do, can you make it bigger?
Is that a
There
little better?
you go. Yeah, can you take the blue off though, or no?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Just the first sentence. I had him writing on the topic negative interest rates. And he starts off, the idea of negative interest rates is one which, WITCH. We were just talking about spell check. Yeah, that passed spell check, but it's the wrong word. It's obviously the wrong word. It's grotesquely the wrong word. And then, he used that. Now, to me, in my paper, how to write, I talk about that being the most useless word in the English language. In 99% of the instances or usages, you can get rid of it, and it actually reads better and clearer. So normally, there's no use for it. Then he goes, but first off, I point out that's conversational, not formal. And he asked the question, what is the negative interest rate? Well, it's kind of like he's presenting the idea, but he doesn't know how to explain it. A negative interest rate is when you are actually charged money to store your money in a bank account like a checking or savings.
That's not true.
When you are actually, that some of this is a little, I guess, picky, but when you are actually charged money, you're charged interest. further displaying he doesn't understand the topic that he's writing on. And then he's got will encourage throughout out the economy. Again, spell check. This is done through encouraging people to lend. So if you read these two sentences in their entirety, the idea behind negative interest rates is that it will encourage spending throughout out the economy. This is done through encouraging people to lend. That makes no sense rationally. There's no continuity between those two sentences.
I like
So
your
I don't know.
WHUT. What?
Yeah. I have no idea what the hell he's talking about. And then he just, goes on and makes several repeated to spend there. Remember, I was talking about there, and there. Well, here's a perfect example. Their money instead, THERE, instead of hoarding it.
Hoarding it? What?
Yeah, that's not usually the problem. There is no incentive for the consumer to spend money instead of hoarding it. So he repeats basically that sentence. He's got a sentence fragment here: negative interest rates and their effects on banks, period. Again,
it's more like a heading.
Yeah. But without being a heading.
Yeah.
Negative interest rates would hurt the banking system exponentially. Why not logarithmically? It just makes no sense. And then there was this one. There's the possibility of banks failing like Lehman Brothers, not Lehman Brothers, lemon as in the lime lemon thing. Possibility of banks failing like Lehman Brothers failing due to negative interest rates. I have no idea what that sentence is saying. I have absolutely no idea.
I will remind you.
No idea how the hell he got through freshman English.
Let me remind you that, guys,
absolutely no idea how he got through high school writing like this.
A junior or senior in college.
And
just want to make that clear.
My university has relatively high academic requirements. Our average entering GPAs of 4.1. Probably average SAT is 1280 to 1300. These kids are supposedly good students.
Brentwood.
Yeah, and I'm sure if you'll find just so many errors. Like I say, this was just a first reading and just notating things as I was reading through it sentence by sentence. And like I say, I just gave up. It was just too much.
Oh, Brentwood,
proven in the first paragraph or two to be inept.
And Brentwood, he's got so many more of these. It's not even funny. And I mean, he he sent me when I was out of town last week. He sent me a text said, "Shit, I've got papers." And I was like, "What kind of papers?" He was like, "The writing ones." I was like, "Oh no, this is not going to be a good week." Because all the red all over the house on the papers. It is insane. And I wish that kids were being actually taught these days.
Just read the last three sentences. Negative interest would cause their THERE to give at more loans. Huh? Negative interest would cause their to give at more loans in proportion to their saving than they normally, period. Due to the fact there would be less available savings and more pressure to give out loans, period. Research actually statistics about this. I got nothing. I absolutely got nothing.
Catherine.
Catherine, makes, it's obvious this guy didn't have any, I would strengthen your statement. He didn't have any grasp of the concept and he didn't read about it. He didn't review it. I generally pick topics that they have to do a little bit of research or look up on. I just don't want stream of consciousness writing, particularly when they're tripping on acid, like this kid was. And
I,
like I said earlier, I'm not mad at this kid. I'm mad at the system that lets him continue to pass through the various grades. I like this kid. He was a good guy. And we actually sat down in my office and laid out a plan for him over the next few years to improve his writing skills. It's possible. And, obviously, it's like I said last week, you can have the greatest ideas in the world, but if you can't effectively communicate them to others, written or orally, they're worthless. And nobody is going to hire somebody that writes a cover letter in this vein, with this type of verbiage, with this type of sentence structure, with this type of flow, or I should say, with this lack of verbiage, this lack of sentence structure, this lack of flow. I mean, this is just brutally obvious.
yeah, and I know a lot of our subscribers and people who listen here are, close to my age. And, we were taught, at least in middle school, if not before, that you have an opening argument, you give 3 reasons for why you believe the way you believe, and then you give a conclusion. It's pretty simple stuff. I mean, I was taught this, I think, in 5th grade, but I don't understand why these kids just don't know a basic way to make an argument in a paper. It's not hard.
It shouldn't be that hard, but it's just, testimony to I can't say depravity. I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but
The fucked up educational system.
educational system. Yeah. We just, and particularly with the money we spend, we could send most of them to a good private school for a half or 2/3 the cost. And I'm a believer in education, but I find this kind of performance, this kind of product to be just anathema. It's just contemptible. And anybody that passed him, the principal that oversaw that system, ought to be fired.
His freshman English teacher at UNCW should be
Yeah.
fired.
Yeah, there's just no excuse. So that's fail number 1 for the night. There's more.
There's so much more.
There is so much more. I really probably won't get to it all tonight, but we do have kind of a habit of sometimes not getting to everything.
But Clay, just before we start, do you think that improving education would improve a lot of the other issues that we have right now in the long run, if we're allowed to get that far?
In the long run, yes. A republic, a democracy depends on well-informed, rational, educated, well-educated people who understand, basic civic relationships, basic economic relationships, and the role of government, and who then have a vested interest in the performance of that government. So I think having, I look at the inner cities, I look at the production of the American educational system, and it's complete and utter fail, particularly in the inner cities. And you see where education is consistently horrible, just absolutely, utterly horrible. for year after year after year after year, going on 3, 4, 5 decades now. It's not an accident that we are grotesquely undereducating these kids. It's intentional. It can't be anything else. Catherine, you should give them a good example to read. George Orwell is an excellent essay writer and fun.
She corrected and said was. Of course.
That's all right. I understood. My problem is I'm a finance professor, not an English professor. If I can list them books to read all day long, but they obviously have not been reading. And I don't think I'm going to be able to flip a switch on them and get them to read necessarily.
And that's not your job.
Well, it's my interest. I encourage them to read. I encourage them to work over the next 2 years to improve their writing and public speaking skills, because I consider them to be essential to their future success. And I point that out, particularly in this day when reviewing the writing assignments. I don't go necessarily into specific books to read because that's really a matter of personal interest. For me, most of my books are on, military history, religion, chemistry, finance, economics. That's not necessarily everybody else's bailiwick. So I don't recommend specific books per se.
I want to make a quick reference. I was listening to Bill Maher today, believe it or not, when he was interviewing the host of Jeopardy now, and I can't remember her name at the moment. And he said, does anybody watch Jeopardy? And she was like, yeah, some people do. And he was like, so there's a very small, limited number of people who have actual knowledge at this point, and they are fading quickly. Now, coming from someone on the left, that is a huge statement to make.
Yeah, I came across a paper a while back, and I wish I had it readily available, that studies show the U.S. is getting dumber.
Oh,
IQ is dropping for the first time in our history.
Exponentially dumber.
So that is a fruit of the system. That's not a flaw in the system.
It's not a flaw in the kids.
And that's what is important to understand.
The kids,
it's like I say, I don't hold it against the kids per se. They've got the ability. They're just trained to fail. Trained not to produce. Orwell's Politics and Language is a great place to start. If they can't put together a cogent sentence, I don't know, but what they might ought to be starting on something a little bit less sophisticated.
Like Pat the Bunny?
I was... unfortunately, these kids are behind, and they have got to figure it out themselves.
How does that happen? How do we expect them to do that?
Well, you got to remember, they're 20 years old.
Yes. And
most of the founding fathers were 18 to 20 years old when they were writing the Declaration and the Constitution.
And they were already much more educated.
Far more. And they had done it largely by candlelight and pencil and paper. KP, just thinking out loud, is it a flaw in the system or a flaw in something else? I think other things have been more politicized over EDU by our culture.
Prioritized,
by over education by our culture. I think it's, I kind of agree with you, But I still put the blame on the educational system. They've got the kids for 8 hours a day, and they're doing nothing with that. Nothing with that. That's a problem. If you've got a kid for 8 hours a day, you ought to, over a period of 12 years, be able to teach them how to read, write, and do arithmetic. When you got them for 9 months, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day for 12 years, you've got some time. You're just not putting in the effort. And, I know there's some school teachers that work hard, but it's not about hard work. It's not about working hard. It's about teaching the kids, and the kids aren't being taught.
Okay. No, I wanted to say, I know that like in North Carolina, it's more about um, what they're going to get on standardized tests. So they teach just those specific things and don't teach them how to think for themselves. They teach them what they have to know so the teacher will get a better score and be able to stay employed.
Yeah, they're just, passing kids that show up.
Mhm. Well, no, they actually have to have, at least in North Carolina, their kids have to have the scores that are high enough so they can continue to teach. So they have this very narrow list of things they have to like instill in the kids so they will get the scores on the standardized tests that they need to have in order to continue to teach. And so they
Yeah,
don't teach them how to think, how to learn. They just teach them what they know that they're going
they
to be
just
tested
teach
on at the end of
the
the
test.
year. Hmm.
They just teach the test. And the kids have the ability to, memorize and puke out, some or regurgitate some material. But that's not education. AI would have written a better paper. That's not the answer. It's it's not the answer. You don't want a people completely subject and servile to computers to do their work. I don't think that should be the goal. I don't think politics in the English language is elevated. It's interesting and persuasive and not very long. If you're educated, it's not. If you're not, it might be a different coin. It all depends on where you're starting from. Now, I've got some good students. Some of these papers I'm reading are well written and thoughtful, and some of them take a position completely opposite to mine, which makes me smile. But there's a percentage of them, altogether too high percentage, that need some serious works. Carson, you keep getting called away and sigh of relief that I'm not able to derail much. Brother, we appreciate you. Keeping
Hey,
it
Carson.
keeping us on our toes.
Carson, I'm derailing plenty for you, so don't worry.
Yeah, she will always step up and pick up the slack if you're unavailable. KP, I'm wondering out loud again, we're seeing the long-term effects of No Child Left Behind. I think that was a major contributor, and I think just the realignment of the educational system over the past 70, 80 years with all sorts of new ideas about education and what kids should be taught and how they should be taught. We know what works. Educating kids is not a big trick or secret. It takes desire, and we know the material and how to do it. We just don't have the will to do it.
Good night, Brentwood.
Good night, Brentwood. Appreciate you popping in.
Yeah, I think it's just, it's dumbed down. The education system is dumbed down so much that I know I was like one of the first in my city. Our class was the first to have like I don't know what they call it now, AG or IG or GI or whatever it was called, academically gifted. And it was like a whole weird thing. Like we were like, why are we getting called out of the room? What's going on? Um, so I don't know. I think everyone should be, this might not go over well, held to a standard that is at least a standard that is attainable. You should read, you should write, you should be able to do arithmetic, especially if you're a freaking junior, senior in college, you should be able to divide 2 by 2. Like, that is not a high standard. Am I wrong?
No, nobody's disagreeing with you.
Okay. I forgot where my thought was going because ADHD kicked in. Sorry.
It's all right. Well, anyway, that's my comments on reading, how I review the papers, and some of the, an example of some of the type or level of papers that American kids are putting together. And interestingly, the best papers are generally from my foreign students. Now, that's not necessarily a fair sample because I get very good foreign students. In order to earn an international scholarship from, some of the countries in Europe or Eastern Europe or wherever, you have to be one of their better students. So it's not really a fair comparison in some ways, but they are consistently my best students, whether it's in investments or derivatives or whatever. And some of them come over here just to take my derivatives course, which is interesting to me. All right, switching gears.
Financial derivatives are not the easiest thing in the world to teach. I'm just saying.
This is Moffat on Money, so we're going to talk a little bit about money, the economy, all that kind of stuff going on. I've been curious what's going on in the banking world. It's been a little quiet since SVB and First Republic tanked, and so noticed that deposit flight had resumed from banks, and so I kind of polled or looked at some of the larger banks, and like Bank of America is paying 0.01%, 0.015% on deposits. Chase is about the same. Citibank is paying 0.05%. So 0.5%. It's just weird. Wells Fargo leads the pack at 0.15%. Now, contrast that fractions of a percent of return to alternatives to bank deposits. CDs right now are yielding 5%. Money markets, 4.8, 5%. Treasury bonds are 4.5, 4.7. If you go out, even the 1 years, the short term are up to nearly 5%. So the alternatives to bank deposits are significant. Deposits continue to flow out of the banks at a historic pace, with over 1 trillion withdrawn from banks in the last year. And remember, if banks don't have deposits, they can't make loans, even if they wanted to. So, people think, the amount of lending has slowed down because the rates, there's not the demand. Well, it's a twofold effect. A lot of banks are running out of liquidity to lend. So we'll see what that's, what the implications and effects of that are going forward. Bottom line is the era of free money for banks is coming to an end. They have got to raise interest rates paid on their deposits, or capital is going to continue to leave them. The problem for banks is that most of their earning assets are long-term mortgages or mortgage securities, and they can't increase their income rapidly. So they're really in a jam. They've got a low revenue stream and they've got a need for a higher expense stream. We'll see how that turns out. I am not terribly optimistic. So when looking at that, I would rate that a fail. Next big topic is housing. Housing has been of moderate interest here on the channel for a while. Well, we got some more news this week. Foreclosures, and some of you may be glad to hear this. Foreclosures have surged 28% from last month.
Seriously.
And 34% year over year. Now, that's as far as the overall economy, that's never a good sign. But I know some people are wanting to buy a house and hoping prices will someday come down. So that's kind of a word of encouragement to the ones trying to keep the faith out there.
Yeah, they'll come down, but the interest rate is so high right now.
It is. It'll probably come down a couple points, but people adjust. Remember, my first home mortgage was 12%. You can do it. It can be done. Now, I knew that as soon as rates started coming down, I was going to refinance that baby, but I needed to get in the house.
Gotcha. I hear you.
So it is possible. The combination now is that rates are high and home prices have stayed high, haven't really dropped significantly or as significantly as would be expected with the attendant rise in rates. Mm-hmm. And that's due in large part to people having these 2.5%, 3% mortgages that they don't want to get rid of and then have to pay 7%, 8%. So, but the flip side is over time, they are going to have to, because they will sooner or later get a job elsewhere. They'll die. They'll need more space. Whatever reasons that people traditionally sell their houses, sooner or later will weigh too heavily or become a reality. So more and more of these houses will enter the markets. And as foreclosures increase, that's going to have a big effect on housing prices. Because like in my neighborhood, if a couple of houses were foreclosed, and the bank sold them off at 60% of their normal value, when time came to appraise my house for a loan, those recent home sales would greatly lower the price I could get selling my home. So it's coming. Had no idea to the extent, no idea to the exact timing, but it's coming. So if you or have family members interested in buying a house, keep the faith. Reality hits, and when it does, it hits hard. Flip side is foreclosures are up, but it's turning out to be a pretty good year for repo men. So we can always find the silver lining there.
Did you hear about what Trump said if he dropped out of the presidential race, that he was going to get a repo company?
No, I didn't.
Because he was going to make it, first of all, EVs, because once they go 300 miles, they're done. And where are you going to charge them? And then with all the financial stuff going on, he was just like, that might be a better idea.
There's always the opportunity to make money. There's never a crisis so bad there isn't an opportunity somewhere. And all of this kind of pairs nicely with 34% of borrowers that say they'll not be able to make their student loan payments. 34%. This is not saying, hey, it'll put me in a tight bind. This is saying, I just can't make the payment. So that gets interesting.
With food prices and everything else going up and gas and yeah,
Fail.
fail. Big fail.
Big fail. Also did some math here. Not that I like math, but
Math
last
is your
month we
job.
talked about how the average price for a home had increased, to about $2,900. Well, I took the median price of a house
Wait,
right now,
wait, wait. The average price of a home was $2,900?
a month payment at
Okay,
7.12%.
okay.
It had gone up in a month from 2,600. Well, a little bit last month, now 430,000. So ran the math on that and it's up to $3,157. How cool is that?
No.
This of course does not include taxes or insurance, which may add another 500 or $1,000 to that. So, kind of a mixed bag, but hey, it is not boring. Certainly not boring. That brought up the question in my mind of what's going on with consumers and general interest payments. Well, as you may expect, new records are being set. How much are they being set? A bunch, a big bunch. Here is the rough level that they were, through 210 to 220. You saw a little dip after the subprime crisis. It gets back up to the level in 209, 208. Well, here's where we are now. 506 billion. And if you'll notice, it's not even exponential. It's perfectly vertical.
Yep.
Consumer debt interest payments have exploded through the roof. Now, keep in mind, this does not include home interest. This 500, oh, let me explain a little bit more. This 506 billion, that's only 1 month. That's only the month of August, the highest in history. During the first 7 months of this year, Americans have paid a total of about $3.3 trillion in personal interest. Okay.
Can you make that bigger?
This is up 80% since 2021.
Okay, there we go. It was hard to read the ones on the bottom. Sky Ricky, thank you. Good night. Sweet
Good
dreams.
night, Ricky. Appreciate you. So, consumer interest blowing up, home mortgages blowing up, student loans blowing up. I'm sure all of this is bullish. Now, last week also talked about John Kerry and his speech on how to achieve net zero. Farming had to be, talking about farming specifically, farming had to be front and center of the effort to fuel emissions, to limit emissions. Sorry. This is a euphemism kind of thing, a euphemism for killing modern farming and modern farming techniques. The use of machinery, mass production, the transportation, use of fertilizers, all those kind of things. Same thing they did in Sri Lanka. I don't know if you remember, we're watching the channel then, but about 8 months ago in the Great Reset 2, I talked about Sri Lanka implementing, let's see if this helps. The Great Reset Part 2. I talked about Sri Lanka voting for a presidential candidate that promised to implement sustainable farming techniques. He was going to lead Sri Lanka into the future, make it number one in green farming and, environmental impact. Well, within a year, he had destroyed the rice crop. It was, if I remember correctly, it was 60% of what it had been. It was so low they couldn't export rice, which was their number one export. They had to even import rice because of not having enough to feed their own people. The second year, the result was even worse. Starvation. Also, the economy started failing. The World Bank refused to bail them out because the economy was so bad. Just a number of complications on that concept of eliminating modern farming techniques. So if you're interested, watch The Great Reset Part 2. Well, I saw this comes up because I saw the bit on food inflation. We talked about how BLS, when I was talking about Kerry, we talked about how BLS was saying food prices rose 3.7% over the past year, ending September. In 22, the previous year, it was 9.9%. 21, it was 3.5. So to put this in context, something that cost $1 in 2021 now, food-wise, according to the BLS, would be $1.18 or 18% inflation. I modestly disagreed with that rate, talking about how the actual rate was higher. And then I came across this. It's a little video, I want to watch. I want you to watch for a second, and I think you'll find it relatively interesting. It's actually from Instagram.
No volume. Clay, no volume. Clay, can you hear me?
You can't hear that?
No.
Okay. I just redid it.
I know.
Let me try
Just
it
saying.
again.
Grocery purchases from 2020 to today, and it's actually insane how much inflation we're seeing in just 3 years. A pound of sliced turkey in 2020 was $3.14. Today, it's $6.72. That's a 114% increase. A pound of ground beef in 2020 was $3.46. Today, it's $5.47, which is a 58% increase. Walmart branded waffles used to be $2.93, and now they're $4.14. Hellmann's mayonnaise used to be $3.77. It's now being sold for $5.48. I think it's a meme that Americans put mayonnaise on everything. I like it on sandwiches, but anyway, 16 ounces of.
They should have used Ellen in that bit. She will put mayonnaise on everything, French fries, and whatever.
I do, but there was no Dukes in there, so no. Only Dukes.
Raw honey used to be $6.88. Any guesses on what it's being sold for right now? Well, she checked on the Walmart app, and today it's being sold for $10.97. 3 pounds of Walmart bacon used to be $11.98, and now they're charging $16.48. It's like everything is consistently up 40.
Wait, stop. Bacon used to be $11 a pound.
She's showing the website. It depends on where you are, but she's showing the website.
Okay, because I used to pay $7.99 a pound. I'm just saying.
It depends on where you are. Big cities, inner cities, prices vary, but they were higher to begin with.
Yeah, take the volume down a tiny little bit. Is that possible? Because it's like really loud.
10%. This gluten-free stir fry
Not.
was $2.73 in 2020, and now it's $4.18 in 2023. These Walmart brand cereal bars were $5.58, and today they're selling for $7.44. And just looking at this woman's purchases, she's not buying brand name, organic, grass-fed groceries or anything like that. These are Walmart brand prices, and even with all that, her grocery bill is still up over 50% in just 3 years.
Now, I kind of want to say ew to the Vienna sausages, but I used to eat those when I was a kid. But they're not tasty. And why would you pay that much for them?
Well, the idea was inflation,
I know the idea.
not not Vienna sausages.
Well, yeah.
Bless your heart.
I know. Moffat.
And then there was this.
From Instacart, and the total that I spent was $746.55. In August of 22, I also did not have a Walmart Plus membership. I joined in September, the month after this. Our groceries went from $746.55 to $1,493.08. This year, I do have a Walmart Plus membership, so I placed orders on both Instacart and Walmart Plus with a total of $1,650.92. Mind you, this is just the month of August for 21, 22, and 23, but our groceries have over doubled. In 2021, we did not have a Walmart.
Tripled. Well, not almost, but over doubled.
Yeah, we talked about when we, several weeks ago, we were talking about inflation, how, the CPI calculation to me seemed to be hokey, that my experience at the grocery store was that prices had doubled.
She was talking about the video. I thought that was pretty funny. Elaine, your mic.
But, and I don't have the basket of goods that the CPI uses. I don't have the time or the ability to go back and track information over the past 2 years. But I saw these two brief videos, and I thought they were fairly informative in terms of what the actual consumer, the actual, poor middle class consumer is faced with, because they were Walmart purchases. They're not going to Whole Foods or whatever.
First of all, here's my pushback on this. I have never, ever, ever, ever spent $750 at Walmart on groceries. Ever. Have you?
Spent $200 in groceries at Walmart?
$756. I think that's what it was at Walmart on groceries.
For a month?
Is that actually an entire month?
Yeah. Month of August.
Okay.
That's what she said.
Okay. Because you and I go,
Somebody get Elaine,
then we forget something. But we'll go and intend, like to Costco, to get a month's worth. And there's always something else we got to go back and get that we forgot or didn't need in bulk or whatever. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that she's not correct.
Particularly for a family, $700 2 years ago was probably average for a family of 3 or 4.
Okay. See,
but the idea is that she had her specific menu, her specific items, specific prices, and they doubled over the past 2 years. That's
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Over the past 2 years. I know, but that's ultimately
I'm just disagreeing with the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because that's me.
Yeah, but if you look at things like orange futures, this year alone, orange futures are up 110%. Since 2020, they're up 320%. Live cattle prices are up, 130, 150%.
Okay.
Sugar is up over 200% over the past 2 years. So, let me just ask you a question. What does it mean when food is outperforming stocks and bonds? You really need to quit waving on the air.
I was just raising my hand.
You don't raise your hands on air. When there's silence, you can speak. Y'all pray for me.
Shut up. What do you? Okay, so futures are up. What does that mean about the prices? What does the percentage of futures of oranges being up? How? What is the direct? I'm asking you. The direct.
Futures is the future price paid for oranges. 1
Okay,
month,
so
3
how
months.
does that affect me today?
Well, it relates obviously to what the price is today and what expectations are for the price in that time period.
Now, is that seasonal because it's getting
Prices have soared over the past 3 years.
okay.
Now, something else that I saw that I thought was terribly interesting was what is known as shrinkflation. Have y'all heard of that term before? I'm going to say that's likely a no. So I'm going to show you shrinkflation. This is some comparison boxes of General Mills cereal. And if you look closely, you can tell the boxes are smaller. Even though they look very close in size. And what General Mills did was drop the contents from 19.3 ounces to 18.1. I don't know why this is opening in another window. Frito-Lay, manufacturer of Doritos, has shrunk its bag from 9.75 to 9.25 ounces per bag. Now, when contacted, Frito-Lay said, we took just a little bit out of the bag so we can give you the same price and you can keep enjoying your chips. Well, there's more. How about the well-known, much-loved Gatorade? They just completely redesigned their bottle from 32 ounces to 28. It's a 14% drop. And the reason they gave, well, it's more aerodynamic and easier to grab. It's also the same price. Then you've even got fast food establishments. Burger King reduced the number of chicken nuggets from 10 pieces to 8. Are you getting the idea here? There's more. We talk about Walmart. Walmart's Great Value paper dropped from 168 sheets to only 120 while the price stayed the same. This is classic shrinkflation. I've got a number of examples, but I'll close with this one. This is the most painful one. A 2-pack of Reese's peanut butter cups used to weigh 1.6 ounces. Now it's just 1.5. So that's the impact of shrinkflation, where the price you pay may not change, but the volume of goods or services you get for it is reduced. I wouldn't be surprised, but what the bulk of what you buy on an everyday basis has shrunk in volume. And the best thing about it, keep in mind that CPI rarely, if ever, captures these cuts or shrinkflation in general. It does not register in CPI, in the inflation numbers. So you may be getting on average 10, 12%. Like Walmart's cut of the number of sheets in the paper towels was a 29% cut. So if you figure, 5% on average, 10% on average cuts in terms of the volume you receive when you buy these goods, it makes a huge difference in your spending. Inflation. is also obviously significant to retirees or near retirees. It's causing a lot of people to have to postpone retirement for years, not just months, but for years. So, for example, if you were planning on retiring with $1 million, prices have risen the past 3 years 17%, according to CPI. For food, energy, and housing, the essentials, it's much higher. But let's take the 17%. It simply means that you need $170,000 more to retire off of to have the same equivalent after inflation retirement income that you did 3 years ago. Does that make sense? So instead of $1 million retiring off $1 million at whatever interest rate, you would now need $1,170,000 at that same interest rate to generate the same purchasing power. Problems further complicated when you understand that the savings rate has fallen to a low not seen since the Great Recession, because spending has increased, incomes haven't, and they're squeezed. So the first thing that gets cut is savings. So even if somebody who wants to retire saved at 10 times the national average right now, he would still only have about $24,000 a year. It will take him 7 years to get the $170,000 plus whatever inflation occurs till that time. So the point is that inflation destroys the poor and the middle class. It converts the former into the latter and makes the latter even poorer. That's something that, when you go to the grocery store and you pay more for goods, you may get a little upset or irritated. But if you start thinking on what the real impact of that is to you, your livelihood, your ability to retire, etc., it can get a whole lot more serious. Now, I also saw where Klaus Schwab was at it again. Remember Klaus Schwab with the WEF, World Economic Forum, the leader of the 2030 initiative? Well, he was giving a talk and saying that by 2030, we won't need cars. We can just call Uber for a self-driving car. And that will allow cities and countries to transform highways into parks. Well, that got me thinking, if Uber can't drive on highways, what will it drive on? You remember the mantra of the 2030 group, you will own nothing and be happy. How many of you are happy or will be happy waiting for an Uber for an hour or two? You notice he never mentions getting rid of private jets, like never ever mentions getting rid of private jets. I mean, to me, that is the long and short of a classic fail. Now, if anybody have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know. A few weeks ago, we saw where Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand, I'll get it right in a minute, after repeatedly telling the citizens that, she and government were the actual purveyors of truth, that they shouldn't listen to anybody else for fear of misinformation, that they were the only true source of information. Well, we found out this past week that she had declared herself and her cabinet exempt from the COVID shot, the mRNA shot. This while requiring everybody else to take it. What? Does that strike you as slightly odd? Why she won't require everybody else to take it, but exempt herself and her cabinet? You know, she ended up having to resign in January. Economy was bad, inflation was bad, and she just said she'd had enough. So her party lost the election 2 days ago in an overwhelming repudiation of the party. The other party won. And I kind of think that this bit of news about her exempting herself while requiring everybody else to take the vax played a role in the size of that loss. But don't fear for her. Even though she resigned and has been jobless, in the fall, she will take a fellowship at Harvard. And so she will teach future generations with her wisdom and insight on how to govern effectively.
Are you back on?
Always been back on. Never left. E-Train returns.
Well, you had us off the video, and then
She's kind of a little whimsical in her appearances.
no, you had us off the video, and you didn't want my opinion, so I figured I would just get some things done.
I want your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Just I don't know what I'm supposed to say to that, but anyway, she's back. So another fail that we saw this week was the Treasury auction. Now, not a lot of people pay close attention to the Treasury auction, but I think I've alluded to it previously that the bond market is a far better purveyor of economic trends, thought, concerns, fears, issues. It's a far more sophisticated market than the stock market in general. And this year, the U.S. Treasury auctioned off 30 years, 10 years, and 3-year notes. Well, the primaries, the large, super large banks that handle that participate in the auction, had to bid for unwanted 30-year treasuries, having to accept 18% of the offer. Now, this compares to 10% of the previous high, according to Dow Jones. The average would be 0, 2%, whatever. It'd be very small. So 18% is a soaringly bad amount. It's a huge tail. Tail is the difference between the anticipated yield going into the market and the highest and the actual yield coming out of the market. That difference is called the tail. Higher tails at auctions indicate government bond issuers had to increase the rates to entice investors to get them to participate in the market. They had to offer more of a premium than what the market anticipated. That's never a good sign. The auction was not only weak with the 30-year, it was also weak with the 10-year and the 3-year auctions. Just across the board, a poor auction for the Treasury. I mean, the only way to explain this is that there was a significant loss of interest in buying treasuries. Is it the large deficit starting to scare investors off? Is it the slowing economy? Is it that savings are being depleted? They don't have the money to participate? Is it because China, Japan, Saudi Arabia are selling treasuries and not in the market to buy anymore? Are other nations dropping out? Also, supply of treasuries is increasing. Not only are those aforementioned nations selling treasuries, more supply on the market, the Treasury is borrowing a lot more supply on the market. So the government has issued about $15.7 trillion in treasuries through September. $15.7 trillion. This is up from $12.5 trillion in 2022. So far higher supplies, $3 trillion in additional supply in 9 months is pretty damn huge. Higher supplies tend to push prices down. You know, it's supply and demand. There's a supply and demand curve for treasuries. So the higher the supply and lower demand, the lower the price. Well, remember the teeter-totter with bonds, how when price drops, yield rises. So if investors aren't attracted to the current yields, the yields have to rise to attract more investors, and the treasury receives less money or has to auction off more securities, which in turn increases the supply and causes yields to drop. So we've seen basically 125% growth in treasuries over the past year, and we're still not done. Remember, we've borrowed $500 billion just in the prior week before this alone.
Can I ask a question about defense?
Just ask a question.
We sent so much of our munitions to Ukraine, and now we're sending them to Israel. What
does this have to do with treasuries?
Nothing. Nothing.
All right. So we're sending munitions to Israel.
And we've sent a ton to Ukraine. And our fuel reserves are almost depleted. Where does that leave us and Israel and Ukraine? Don't say you don't know. You have an opinion.
Well, I mean, you know, we can always ask Russia to quit invading Ukraine and ask Hamas to be nice to Israel and ask China not to invade Taiwan. So we have options. You know, we can.
Is that your best answer?
I mean,
your final answer.
You know, when you run out of money, you run out of bullets, your choices are limited.
I know, but like we could get pulled into this and we have nothing left.
Yeah, I saw where Iran is threatening to enter into the war if Israel moves into Gaza, which they're going to do. So if Iran tries to move an army down through Lebanon, or I don't know how they would do. Would they go get a agreement and march through Iraq? I don't know.
I saw today where there was a thermal image of the what is the big ship out there?
The Ford, the aircraft carrier?
Yeah. That there are no accompanying ships around it anymore.
Well, good night, Catherine. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for being so sweet and tell me I look lovely tonight. That reminds me of the song, You Look Wonderful Tonight. Thank you.
And I didn't see this one earlier, Catherine. We waste too much food anyway. Amen. We waste a ton of food, but you know, part of that is because the laws won't allow it being given to like homeless or to charity outlets. There's a lot of issues there. We could do a lot better with food, but there are a lot of people that have had to change their eating habits or the food that they buy because they can't simply afford what they used to.
Yeah, and if they were buying vegetables and such before, now they can't afford to buy all the fresh fruits and vegetables they had in the past because it's too expensive.
Just thought we'd give this the credit it deserves.
Thank you, Catherine.
We appreciate you joining us. So, horrible Treasury auction. The stock market reacted by ending a 4-day up streak, with Friday being a relatively severe drop. Dow wasn't down too bad, but the NASDAQ was down, I don't know, 160 points. So kind of resumed the kind of negative attitude, and reality slapped a few investors in the face. So that was a pretty major fail. We talked previously this week about the jobs fail, the jobs report, the payrolls showing 336,000 jobs were added. Well, when you look underneath the headline, you find out that actually, according to the report, 22,000 full-time jobs were lost and 150,000 part-time jobs were created. The rest of the increase was a seasonal adjustment. It also showed a record, an all-time high of 447,000 jobs. I'm sorry, 447,000 jobs were being held by the people with 2 full-time jobs. Number of people holding 2 full-time jobs was 447,000. I will get this out in a minute. It's a little hard to read, talk, think, type, pet the dog at the same time. My skills are limited.
Question. Is the reason for these part-time, this is just full-time? Is any of this have to do with the immigration issues?
I mean, it's probably all related. Immigrants increase the price of housing because they increase demand. They lower wages because they increase supply. So there's several effects that could be at play here from, a large number of immigrants.
And we've had at least 3 million people into the country in the past 2 years.
Yeah, but I can generically say what that impact would probably be, but I have no specifics or way to accurately measure it. So I can't really comment specifically on exactly what the impact is.
But there must be one.
There must be one. There highly likely is one. And it would be generally adverse to people in those markets. Now, the alternate argument, well, there's another thing too. A lot of them receive benefits, transition benefits, health care, whatever, from the government. So this increases government expenditures. It's also more than what Americans who are receiving, for example, disability from the government receive.
Some with Social Security receive a lot less.
Less than that. Yeah. So there's some issues there. But, you've got a record number, and this isn't even close. 447,000 people. You look at the average here, people with 2 full-time jobs, like working 2 people, person working 2 different restaurants 40 hours a week. You're around, 225,000 to maybe 300,000. So it's almost doubled in the past 2 years. It's just absolutely insane. It's a huge, major fail. Now, the next major fail is something that probably has generated a hell of a lot of attention this week. And that is Sam Bankman-Fried.
Oh, I'm so proud of you.
His much maligned girlfriend, Carolyn, and I actually feel sorry for her because people have torn into her about her appearance and looks.
That's never nice.
There was a court artist that did a picture of her. It looked like she was melting. It was just, my opinion, terribly mean. And then there's been a lot of commentary on it. Yeah, it's like Ellen said, that's never a good thing, never necessary. Now, if somebody were ripping her for her poor taste in men, I could understand that, but I digress. She testified this week for most of this week and spent several hours being grilled by Sam's attorneys, who weren't really able to shake her testimony or undermine her testimony. Cohen got her to admit that Sam didn't oversee every bit of day-to-day operations. He didn't micromanage, which I don't remember reading through her testimony that she ever stated or implied. Cohen is Sam's defense attorney. Cohen also got her to admit that she was a poor manager, maybe out of her league, which whoever the idiot was that hired her, oh wait, that was Sam, should have known as well.
Didn't she take a plea deal?
She did. She has pled guilty on 7 charges. Now, she has not been sentenced yet. So I'm sure the defense will, argue, or at least in its final summary, indicate that her testimony should be discounted because she's hoping to get a lighter sentence by testifying. Flip side is he hadn't been able to point out any inconsistency or lies in her testimony so far.
Figured that sort of why she plea deal, so she would testify against him. And me, just saying.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. He got her to admit she was a poor manager, which, at that time, everybody in the courtroom let out a gasp, a huge gasp.
Like,
I kid. Anybody that didn't know she was a poor manager going in that trial had no business filling a seat. Now, Caroline also testified there were times when Sam wasn't paying much of any attention to Alameda. He was distracted by, lying to investors or something else, but that he always gave ultimate directions on what should be done, how Alameda should, handle major issues. She stated they had a conversation over Signal, which Signal was the texting program they use that is it's a highly secure communications program, uses very sophisticated encryption algorithms, and it has the ability, you can set it to delete text after a fixed amount of time, a few hours, a day, whatever you want. So they continued to have conversations over Signal about Alameda. Of course, she doesn't have, those conversations.
And you can have free overseas calls with Signal.
Yeah.
Well.
So, and she talked about, using Signal before and after their breakup, which, remember, they did have, somewhat of I guess I can call it a romantic relationship. And I kind of find, I find it a little bit interesting, intriguing. Some people try to argue that she was just being set up by Sam, that he had the affair. He hired her to be the patsy for the fall of Alameda. He knew it was going to collapse.
I have thoughts. Thought number one. Many think that Carolina's not that attractive, right? And they're giving her a lot of grief about that. Thought number two, Sam is not attractive at all. So what would make anyone think that he could get someone above his own attractiveness level?
He's rich.
Does character not
Next question
play a factor in any of this? I mean,
you're a girl. Tell me, do rich celebrity guys score attractive women?
Do old college professors score attractive women?
I rest my case.
No, character is huge.
It should be, but it often isn't the main issue of who somebody chooses to hang around or have a relationship with for a period of time.
Now, do I think that it's possible that she took the fall for him, or that he may have set her up for that after the fact when he realized what was going on? It's very possible.
Yeah, I don't
do with this. So his character is negligible.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has any doubts about that either, particularly with his track record as we know it now. But she testified, for this week, and some observers were quoted as saying it was an eager and well-prepared testimony. But she testified repeatedly that Sam directed her to commit these crimes. And when promoted to CEO, she, expressed some concerns that it was too big of a job for her. She wasn't prepared. But Sam comforted her
Oh, he's okay.
by telling her she was the right person for the job. And, he offered to pay her $200,000 a year plus bonus. And sometimes her bonuses were $20 million. I find this, kind of amusing. I'm not a stockholder or investor in FTX. So I got to admit, I do find it amusing. Sam is trying to paint her as a poor, inept, worthless manager and out of her league. But he's the one who hired her.
Did she go to Stanford as well?
He's the one that was giving her $20 million in bonuses a year. I can see the Joker going, why so much, Sam? Yeah. Was she Stanford or MIT? I think she was Stanford.
She was not stupid.
No, she was a math major. Mm-hmm. But she was
a business major.
Well, she had no real experience in financial securities, in running a hedge fund, investing and negotiating business deals on down the line. She was just a horrible appointment for the job. That wasn't her fault. But that was just typical of the company.
He could control her then, though. That's why he did it.
Yeah.
That's why.
It's probably a very good reason.
Because
or explanation.
A $20 million bonus, you just got to do this.
Yeah.
This is what you should do. When she has no idea.
And she also testified that, the company had it set up that Sam had it set up so that Alameda could borrow customer funds from FTX. He started it. He had the software. Singh testified that he had the software adapted to allow that, set the system up to do it. So it's their testimony is consistent and united on that point. And this was kind of interesting, she also detailed a $100 million payoff to the Chinese to get them to free up FTX assets. And the idea was that they would, pay this well, initially the idea was to set up an account and incur losses in the accounts that the Chinese had locked up, wouldn't let Sam move or access, but go ahead and accrue losses in those accounts and then accrue the gains, the contrary gains, in accounts that were set up, registered to Thai hookers.
Literally.
Prostitutes. I kid you not. They got the Thai prostitute IDs from Salome. Don't know where he got them from.
From who?
Somebody that worked with him.
Oh.
And, tried to execute imbalanced trades between the two accounts. Apparently didn't work too well. So Sam finally had to cough up $100 million, send it to the Chinese designated accounts, and then the Chinese government unfroze the FTX locked accounts. So they were able to finally access their money. $100 million bribe. Now, I've seen some people reference it $150 million. So take your pick. There's some confusion there, but $100 million bribe. Sam paid that for access. He paid how many tens of millions to U.S. government officials for access? Is there really any difference? He was buying influence.
Don't.
Speak.
Okay. So Sam was also working with the Chinese. This might not be popular, but so was Hunter.
I've seen no link between the two.
Well, it doesn't take a genius.
Yeah, it's not impossible, but so far I've seen no link between the two.
I bet it's gonna come out.
That'd be interesting if it did.
Who thinks I'm wrong? Put it out there. Love to see it.
Also, the prosecution admitted into evidence a memo that Carolyn had written while at Sam. She would, make notes. Excuse me. She would make notes, and here is her memo that was entered into testimony, and it's got, some interesting things. They were, come on now, here it goes. Sam is freaking out about hedging. Basically, Alameda was not hedged on anything. Bad PR in the next 6 months. Well, no shit. Investors were trying to get their money back, couldn't do it. Getting regulators to crack down on Binance. Binance was one of their major competitors and actually had kind of entered into a deal to buy FTX or FTT tokens and then backed out. So Sam was all mad. But, this made me think, what the hell was Sam doing talking to regulators about potential future actions? Regulators should never comment to a competitor about potential future investigations of competitive firms. I'd be like, who the hell were these regulators? They need to be doing some long time. They were getting incentivized some way or orders from somebody. And, Carolyn's testimony was that the regulators told Sam that it would happen soon.
You're not there yet.
I was sitting here, but that's the main thing on the menu that
buying Snap. Isn't Snap y'all help me. An assistance? Like for food and such?
Oh, you're thinking of the food stamp program,
Yeah.
SNAP program. Yeah, no, that's not the same SNAP.
Okay, who's Lily?
Don't know. Don't know.
Who's MBS?
Mortgage-backed securities.
Okay. Why would you ever? Okay. Sorry. Who is Medulla?
Ellen?
Mm-hmm. You said you were done with this list.
Yes, I am done with it because I have nothing else to add about this list. I don't know everything that's on there. Sorry about that.
Insto stock on board. What does that even mean?
Yeah, she was talking about SNAP benefits, but that's a government program. Nobody's buying it.
NGOs, non-government organizations,
yes,
can make lots of money off that kind of thing.
Yeah, but they weren't in the business of distributing benefit cards or managing food supplies.
We're in the business of commingling with the Democratic Party, and that's a great way to launder money.
Yeah, I don't think that's the SNAP they were talking about. So
saying.
let's not create rumors and innuendo here.
KP, I hear you, love. Mm-hmm.
The main point to me was that testimony was entered into court that he was talking with regulators, and that's wrong on way any level.
My opinion only.
Now, as you know, Binance's CZ, the CEO of Binance, tweeted they were backing out of the FTX investment. In his words, due to recent revelations that have come to light. So they had started to examine FTX, didn't like what they saw, and backed out of the purchase agreement. There was discussion between Sam and Caroline and the executive staff about tweeting info to manipulate the market. How cool is that?
KP, SNAP benefits are not political sweeteners, but they are NGOs if someone took advantage of that, like they did with the rehousing of the immigrant children, they can make a lot of money and then give them back.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about here.
I'm just saying.
I'm saying we're not talking about that.
Okay, sorry.
So here's the text that was saved. This was in a group chat, and you've got Caroline saying, "I think I'm going to tweet at CZ that we will buy it all from him for 22." Remember, CZ Binance owned a bunch of FTX, and when he made this tweet about, due to recent revelations that have come to light, we will not be, continuing, he disclosed that they were going to sell their position. So Carolyn comes up and says in this tweet, "I think I'm going to tweet at CZ that we will buy it all from him at 22. Any objections?" And then Ben Zai, or Chai, says, "I can imagine that hurting. Might be better if the market is willing to buy it for 22 rather than the affiliate, which is Alameda. But not strongly opposed." This is a guy trying to cover his ass and tell Caroline that she was full of it because there was no way in hell that Alameda had the cash to buy the shares from Binance at 22. Well, down here, Sam chips in and he says, "I think the main point is just to counter the PR narrative here. And Binance probably won't take us up on it. I also think, for what it's worth, that the market is likely to buy more if we tweet it. But I don't know. Caroline, I'm about to tweet." So here they are saying, we're just going to tweet this bullshit just to try to stir up market interest. That's otherwise known as fraud.
Like the Twitter 7.
And that's highly illegal.
Mm-hmm.
So now they were registered in Bahama. They are under Bahamian law, but they've got affiliates in the U.S. or they had assets in the U.S. So I'm not sure technically if this is and here's Caroline at the bottom saying FTT will go up. If this technically is a manipulation issue, would need a competent lawyer, hint, hint, to give an opinion on that. But first time I saw this just struck me as immensely wrong and probably highly illegal. Caroline also admitted or recalled that the hedge fund, Alameda, had also borrowed a ton of Ethereum tokens, 77%. Okay, let me start over. That they had borrowed not only 77% of the customer dollar deposits, but they also borrowed a lot of the crypto deposits, such as Ethereum. They borrowed 52% of all the Ether that FTX was holding for customers. And they borrowed 25% of all Bitcoin that FTX was holding for customers, as well as all of the Australian dollar deposits.
Hang on. So FTX was borrowing from Alameda, and Alameda was
borrowing from FTX customer accounts. So it's like you are a customer with some bank, Bank of America, for example, and you make a deposit. And then one of Bank of America's subsidiary companies decides they don't have enough cash to run their business. So they have the ability to go in and borrow money from you without your permission, without your knowledge.
Okay, you got to start make that simpler.
Okay.
There's Tallulah, Chunk, and me. Make it simple.
Alameda was owned by Sam, as was FTX. And Alameda had access to FTX. FTX had customers of its own, independent of Alameda, and customers would deposit money. FTX was a broker.
Right.
So customers would deposit money and cryptocurrency with FTX.
Right.
And so out of this pool of customer money, Alameda had a back door into FTX's computer program and could withdraw money from customer accounts and use it for its own purposes.
Okay, for some reason I thought that it went the other way.
It was from FTX to Alameda.
Not
the money flow.
Alameda never lended FTX anything.
No, Alameda was the one that did all the risky stuff, lost all the money, broke.
Okay. And
FTX was just a fraud.
And Alameda was the one that lended Sam $1 billion before they went.
Yeah, paid for the rent in their hotels and everything.
Okay.
Covered all the expenses.
Sorry, I had it.
So one thing that I thought was interesting, I'm not sure why, but Alameda borrowed all of the Australian dollar deposits, which kind of offended me. Why would they prefer the Australian dollar over the U.S. dollar?
It's worth more.
They only stole 77% of the U.S. dollars. They stole 100% of the Australian dollars. I'm offended as an American, honestly.
You shouldn't be.
She
finance guy. You
recalled also how Sam said that lying and stealing money were permissible in his worldview, that it wasn't in his framework. She then recalled becoming more and more comfortable doing those things and sending out false information.
What are you doing?
And this was her testimony.
No.
This is, to me, just a repeat of the old adage that you need to choose your friends wisely. You are much more apt to adopt their vices and not their virtues. So Caroline also testified that Sam instructed her and other staff not to put things into writing that might get us in legal trouble. That's why they always used Signal to communicate. Didn't use email. They had this group text, but conversations on it were rare. And it fits. It fits with everything we've seen and heard about the operations at FTX and Alameda and, prior testimony. It fits perfectly with the lack of written email, written memos, written directives, the use of Signal itself. At one point, hey, Chunk's demanding a little attention here. The prosecutor asked Ellen to describe something. Don't know what that was about, but
me neither.
He's not happy.
I think he wants his ball. And no, you're not getting up there. He asked Ellen. You mean Ellison? You just put my name in there. I think that's why he's squealed.
No, the prosecutor asked Ellison to describe. I may have said Ellen, but may have asked Ellison to describe Sam. And she replied, kind of interesting, that he didn't put much into his appearance, much effort into his appearance, that he wanted to look sloppy, didn't cut his hair often. She said the press and investors took his appearance as a sign he was just a, average Silicon Valley nerd who knew how to code and didn't care much about fancy designer clothes or cars, which is apparently exactly the image he wanted to project. He was good at it. Ellison, now this I have trouble believing. Ellison tells that, let me get this right here. Ellison testified that Sam said he actually got higher bonuses because of his hair. That his hair had been very valuable to him.
Probably because I'm not going to say it. Never mind. Chunk, did you really just jump up here?
In all my years, I have never in my life heard a manager or boss, particularly in finance, pay someone a bonus because they liked their hair. And his hair sucked. I'm sorry. It sucked. It was nowhere near as pretty as mine. So I have emailed Jane Street Capital and asked them how much they would pay for my hair to flow around their corridors. If they are willing to pay, we might be able to strike a deal. So if they like good hair, the offer's on the table.
Unfortunately, it's not as good as it could be because I have failed at it today.
Takes me about 5 months to get an appointment, but it's okay. I'm used to it.
I offered and you denied.
At 4:30, I was working.
I offered at 4:15 and said, "Hey, how's 4:30?"
Also didn't see it till like 5. But anyway,
because you don't pay attention.
They also released a voice recording made by one of the software engineers, Christian Droppy. He was working for Alameda and had grown concerned about its operations during his time there. So he asked Ellison if Alameda's loans were collateralized through the spot margin group. She said they weren't, and Droppy said, "Well, that seems pretty bad." Droppy then said he asked Ellison if this was a YOLO thing. And, when he was in the courtroom, they asked, "Well, what is YOLO?" And he said, it's an acronym for you only live once. When you do a YOLO thing, it's something that's spontaneous. It's not premeditated, he said. So I wanted to have Miss Ellison confirm on this recording that this was a deliberate decision. And he said he expected her to answer in the affirmative. And in this recording, Ellison giggled, which Droppy said was kind of like a nervous tick or a nervous response. He had known her for a year and a half at this point in time, and he called it her nervous laughter. And when she was asked by a staffer whose idea it was to plug Alameda's loan losses with FTX customer money, she said, Sam, I guess, and giggled. FTX has always allowed Alameda to borrow user funds, as far as I know. She said that's the actual recording. Yeah. And, that's the whole prosecution's case, is that they are trying to prove that Sam not only knew of, but encouraged and set up the process to borrow quote unquote, borrow customer funds. Understand, there was no notification to the customers. There was no loan agreement. There was no interest paid. There was no formal arrangement. They just went in and took money, and then they called it a loan. Most people would call it theft.
Excuse me. They never kept records of what they had or didn't.
Yeah, that's been part of the trouble with the bankruptcy process, is figuring out who owned what and who was owed what. So, usually they use Signal for their conversations, but, they did have some of these group chats. And interestingly, they called these group chats the people of the house.
Okay.
People of the house. Now, they had one chat.
In 2021, we did not have a Walmart Plus membership, so I was.
Yeah.
She's cute though.
They had one chat, and she keeps good records.
$15K a month in rent. What? I'm sorry.
Where one of the family members was expressing some concerns about the rent. And I don't know if you can see this or read it, but it says, "Hello, friends." First one, L. It's only identified as L. "I hate to be that person, but while I could probably swing paying $15K a month in rent, it would be kind of rough. I think that it's currently said probably wouldn't want to live in any of the rooms. I think the voting mechanism can help us get to a set of prices that would work." I think blah, 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 blah. Adam Yudita stated, haha, Andrea and I were thinking along similar lines. And I think Caroline didn't mean to anchor us to the 90K number. So 90K apparently is their monthly rent. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Well, the last three texts are from Sam. And Sam states, I've been mentally assuming that the aggregate rent collected would be $0 and mostly thinking of bidding in who gets to direct marginal dollars anyway. Final clause is the kind of the money quote. I'm totally fine, excited if others want to have economic exposure to it, but I've just been assuming that it's basically just Alameda paying for it in the end.
Ouch.
Yeah. So here he makes a statement in a public text that he is expecting Alameda to pay his personal expenses. This goes straight to the heart of the matter that the prosecution has been trying to prove, that Sam was using Alameda's money for his own personal expenses, his own personal lifestyle. So that was kind of the highlights of the testimony. There were some other interesting aspects that came up. There were several motions made by the defense that the judge nixed. The defense wanted to talk about Sam's charitable giving to politicians and others. I don't know who all else. And the lack of U.S. crypto regulations, such as the lack of crypto regulations excuses you for lying, cheating, and stealing. The judge said the jury would not hear about either one of those or the likelihood of FTX recoveries, the effort of the bankruptcy executor to recover FTX's lost and stolen money. He also barred testimony about FTX's stake in Anthropic, an AI startup firm whose value has recently surged. Anthropic has zero publicly traded stock as of yet, but it's in talks with Amazon to raise between $2 and $4 million with an investment from Amazon. Bezos is interested in participating. If they do it, if this goes through, this would roughly put the company's valuation at somewhere around $30 billion, which, well, and the idea of that is that if Amazon gets 10% stake for $3 billion, then 100% would be worth $30 billion. If this happens, that would make FTX investors whole. Everybody would, get their full amount owed. It also looks like Ellison took some of her $20 million bonus and invested $10 million of it in Anthropic. So I have no idea what that is worth now. I'm not sure the timing when she invested or the interest she received in the firm, but I have no doubts. If so, she's done well. Now, compare that investment to some of the other investments Sam made. Remember, we talked about this when we were talking about the FTX saga was it November? Mm-hmm. Almost a year ago. Sam, purchased shares or interest in the NFT generator Bored Apes. I don't know if you remember me calling up that website or not, but if you haven't seen that, you ought to take a look. Bored Apes NFT generator. And then the Bitcoin miner Genesis, which folded. So there is a lot of ground to make up. And the kind of interesting thing is the last message between, trying to see if I can find it here.
What the next one? Over?
Oh, yeah. This is the last message between Caroline and Sam after that occurred immediately after the collapse of Alameda and FTX. Ellison confessed that she had increasing dread of this day and that it was weighing on me for a long time. But now that it's actually happening, it just feels great to get it over with one way or another. Excuse me. Her first comment was actually, by the way, if things get a lot worse, I don't think I'm going to handle it well. And she says, following up on that, this was such a bad prediction. This is the best mood I've ever been in a year. So before the collapse, she said, if things get a lot worse, I don't think I'm going to handle it well. Well, things got worse. FTX and Alameda collapse. So she sent Sam a text saying,
Can I say something about
this was such a bad prediction. This is the best mood I've been in a year.
in like a year?
In like a year.
2 ends, 1 like, to be honest.
Yeah, I've been in like a year. So Sam replies to that, best mood I've been in. He replies, wow. Congrats, ? Because shit's exciting. Sam seemed to be a little offended that Caroline was in a good mood after things had blown up. And that's when she said she'd been dreading the day, and now that it's actually happening, it just feels great to get it over with. Yeah.
Sorry, Valley Girl thing.
She testified that after that, she and Sam never communicated or met after that. So for the week, looking to sum everything up, we've got further economic decline. We've got more homelessness, more crime, more war, more debt. This is kind of the idea of how to build back better. So can I get... Oh,
you messed it up.
I messed it up.
Where'd it go?
Where'd it go? There it is. Can I get
Epic fail?
A big all is well chant from everybody. Shouting out to all my people who love Animal House. All is well. All is well.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So,
this has been a big week NFL.
And we will discuss the wars, Israel, other things coming up. Whatever you guys want to know, whatever knowledge we have, we will share it with you. And there you go.
Yeah, and I don't know that's necessarily the knowledge we have. We just throw stuff out, and
we throw shit against the wall.
No, don't do that. We do a little research, do a fair amount of work to put this together.
I know. I'm just saying it's
Yeah, it's not thrown up against the wall.
Okay, I'm just trying to.
I would cut off her mic, but I can't do that.
Because it's yours.
That's why she sneaks down here.
No, y'all, I finally got a good sleep last night, a good night's sleep. And I've got to go back next week to see my grandfather. So I feel like I've been on the road more than I've been home recently.
Yeah, she's helping him clear up some things. So it has been I think a good and beneficial experience for both.
And I'm exhausted and a little bit nutty, so I do apologize. But.
So does anybody have any questions? We, have enjoyed you being here tonight. Always, as usual. Hope you got something out of it, even though the topic is a little, can I say, dark? When you cover fail after fail after fail. But when that's the way the week, when that's the way the week has been.
Thank you, KP. I am too. It's just been a lot, and there's a lot to do. And I'm gonna keep trying, keep going, keep doing all the things. And he had a great birthday. Maybe I can get you to put that video up that I sent you.
Yeah, remind me Tuesday, because I have to transfer it from my phone.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been, my papa's the best. So
yeah, this is the guy she has greatly admired, almost idolized since she was just a little snotty-nosed kid.
Well, he was the only male that I had in my life consistently throughout my life. So he is, he taught me values. He taught me about family and how important it is. And he taught me about how important is to know where you came from and just all kinds of things.
Jeffrey, appreciate you chiming in. Mr. Chunk, we'll have to catch up. Good night to you.
Wait,
Thanks for being here.
Wait.
Ellen's trying to get you to wait.
You didn't. Here's the chunk.
No, he says missed a chunk.
A chunk.
That is the chunk.
I got a chunk.
Who wants his ball? You can't even see the dude on the air. It's just a black blob.
That was a joke. I tried to like draw chunk and ended up just doing like a black circle.
Yeah, you can't, unless it's just like broad daylight, all you see is this black blob. If we're walking at night, we literally lose him, wondering where he is. Because
the good thing is no one else will see him ever.
Yeah, he blends in with the night.
He won't stop.
So, but appreciate you being here, Jeff. Thank you, sir.
Pink tongue. You can see
that. You can see his tongue when he sticks it out a little bit, or white under his chest.
Mm-hmm. His chin.
So, well, thank y'all once again.
We love you.
Love you. Appreciate you being here.
And if you guys have a question, email us at moffatonmoney@gmail.com. Twitter is at moffatonmoney. Follow us, email us. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah. And give us a like if you will.
Aww.
We appreciate your support. KP, my grandpa's my favorite person in the world. He passed almost 20 years ago, but that doesn't matter. He will always be my favorite. I hope your time with your pop is meaningful and special.
It is. Thank you, KP. Bless you.
Blessings to you all. Our time is up. We thank you for yours.
Good night.